I am profoundly disappointed, dismayed, and disgusted by the NCAA's decision. After a 4.5-year process, a process that took over twice as long as the FBI's original investigation, to use this flawed and inconsistent process to take away the opportunity for postseason and the NCAA tournament from student athletes that had nothing whatsoever to do with this case, proves to me that the national office has chosen to weaponize the NCAA tournament against the very membership that has turned it into the lifeblood of the NCAA. I have a deep and fundamental disagreement with the NCAA using the tournament in this way. It is the bad actors, those that knowingly circumvent and violate the rules, that should be punished. It is unnecessary to punish these student athletes this way, and is further proof that the NCAA system is disconnected and broken. Deep and drastic changes are needed to create a better, more consistent, and fairer model. We began this process with the NCAA before Coach Boynton had the opportunity to coach his first game as a head coach at Oklahoma State, and this week we enter his 5th season. He has recruited and coached every single game with this investigation, infractions, and appeals process taking place. It has not stopped or even slowed him in this Cowboy basketball program, and this decision today will not either. I want every OSU fan to know that we take playing by the rules very seriously. We will continue to do so. Upon learning of the FBI's evidence, we never disputed that we employed a person that was operating outside our system and outside the rules. We took immediate action to remove him and began cooperating with the NCAA. Because of that, I'm very concerned that today's decision will send a very chilling message to the NCAA membership that cooperating in an investigation with our own governing body is not in your best interest. What message does it send to the membership that you can receive a postseason ban regardless of the fact the findings found no lack of institutional control, no head coach responsibility, no failure to monitor, no academic fraud or misconduct, no participation of ineligible players as a result of violations, and no recruiting violation, a decision we believe has never happened before in the history of the NCAA. What is the membership to make of a postseason ban for student athletes 5 seasons after the fact because of a rogue employee who was acting solely on behalf of his personal self-interest, went to great lengths to hide it from his employer, and resulted in 0 advantages in recruiting or competing for the institution? It seems to me, if it were applied consistently, the message the NCAA is sending to the membership is a new standard. Of course, it remains to be seen if this new standard will be applied consistently. Only time will tell, and we will be watching. In closing, I know I am joined by our alumni and fans in saying that I'm as proud today of Cowboy basketball, Coach Boynton, and these student athletes as I have ever been. I know the entire OSU family joins me in thanking Coach Boynton for his leadership and the way he and his program represent our institution. I know we will rally around and get behind Coach Boynton and this team. We start the season on Friday and look forward to having everyone back in Gallagher-Iba Arena this year. The future of this program remains bright. Great things are ahead for Cowboy basketball.
Thanks, Shad. Thank you all for being here. I'm disappointed, disgusted, appalled, frustrated. But somewhere in Indianapolis, there's a group of people celebrating. Stan Wilcox gave a directive. He sent John Duncan and the team to save face. They won. Our players don't deserve and shouldn't have to deal with this. Russell Register and Sharika Montgomery came here and interviewed everybody they could, and they uncovered nothing. The FBI did a job, and so did we. There was a single NCAA violation. One player received $300. One player, not a recruit, not a future recruit, not a family member, one current player received $300. And in and of itself, because it was self-reported by us, it's a secondary violation, to which the punishment is you pay the money back, you serve your suspension, which the kid did, and you move on. How we're here, and Stan Wilcox, and John Duncan, and Russell Register, and Sharika Montgomery, and the Committee on Infractions, to include Ellen Ferris, Anthony Jenkins, Jonathan Alger, Allison Rich, and David Shipley. That's the Appeals Committee, excuse me. The Committee on Infractions, Alberto Gonzalez, Joe Maturi, Gary Miller, Vincent Nicurto, Larry Parkinson, Thomas Sullivan, and I don't know the young man's name who's the general counsel at Princeton. I can't say it, and I won't try to butcher it. They slept well last night. They felt good about the work they did. While I explained to 17 kids that their dreams of playing the NCAA tournament this year couldn't be realized. And that's shameful. And there's no wonder that nobody trusts them, because they get to hide behind letters, COI, and IF, and they don't have to come and do this and answer questions and talk to kids and talk to parents. And so the message is clear, because we had a $300 violation, no failure to monitor, no lack of institutional control, no recruiting violations, no head coach responsibility, no players playing ineligible. So if you got some of those things going on, don't do what we did. What we did was we asked them that we work with them through this process. On January 20th of 2020, I flew to Atlanta to do the first round of this process with the NCAA. The next day, we played OU here. It was important that I be there. I went to Atlanta for no reason, to cooperate with them, to cooperate with John Duncan and Sharika Montgomery and Russell Register. And then this year, on February 7th, while in Lawrence, Kansas, for a game, the day we played, we had an appeal hearing. And we cooperated. And we showed up. And we'd answered their questions. And we provided all the information they asked. So if you're one of those other schools, be careful what they ask you for. Stan Wilcox should be ashamed that he gave this mandate, because this was about trying to save face for something that was uncovered, not because of their doing. And now our cooperation has made it worse for a guy like Isaac Likely, who was nowhere near Stillwater when this was happening. I had a young man in my meeting last night raise his hand and ask me, Coach, what are we talking about? That's how long it's been. They're not answering any questions today. That's all you need to know about them.
Jacob Under with the Oklahoman. I guess for either one, really, is there another step? Is there anything you guys can do from here on to appeal, to legal action, anything like that? Is there anything in the works?
Not that I'm aware of. I think anything like that we are aware of that's been done before has been wasted effort. Not that we are, I mean, we will explore, all opportunities or all avenues, but there's nothing that we are aware of as part of the process that is broken and that is flawed.
And Mike, I know this is obviously emotional, and the meeting I'm sure was last night too. Can you talk about the players and your message to them and what their reaction was?
Sadness. I never imagined that we'd get the information we got on June 5th. And the more I think about it, the more frustrated it is. Because I said that meeting was on February 7th this year. It's 9 months ago. If this was the decision, have some courage and stand up and say, we stand by what we said. So no, there's nothing really surprising that the players are frustrated. And, in 72 hours plus, or less now at this point, 72 hours last night, but in about 48 hours, we're going to try to play a basketball game. I'm going to try to get these kids to buy into each other. And I'm going to need our fans' help.
Dave Hunziker, Cowboy Radio Network for Chad. In the summary, there are several references to the institution being responsible for the behavior of the coach involved in the infraction, yet there was no finding for institutional control. What type of explanation did you get for that?
We haven't. We've asked for clarification. We've asked, what is an institution supposed to do different? Our understanding is that is part of the infractions process, is being able to know what it is that you did wrong, be able to fix it, and to be able to send the message to the rest of the membership that this is what you got to be aware of, try to avoid, do different, whatever. And I don't know what the message is, because as far as I can tell, the only thing that we did was hired him. And we did not know that this was going on. Started at another institution, continued once he got here. I assume it would have kept going at another institution had he left to go there. But we didn't. He was very good at hiding it. We have all of our systems in place to monitor everything that we can. The committee said that there was no lack of institutional control, no failure to monitor. So I don't know what we could have done different or supposed to do different. That seems to me to be the new standard that we're talking about here.
May I ask a follow-up, if I could, please? Representative David Kustoff of Tennessee is introducing legislation at the federal level to address the NCAA enforcement process. Have you or Dr. Shrum been in contact with any of your congressional group from Oklahoma about this?
not about this specific, I mean, this is all, you know, so new. I'm sure there would be people that would be willing to help and agree with maybe that, you know, what's taking place in Tennessee. You know, I think everyone believes the NCAA process is broken and flawed. That's why we're having a constitutional convention, right? And there's going to be this kind of discussion in it. So I don't think that there's very many people out there that would you know, disagree with the fact that this is broken and this is flawed. And I guess to go back to Jacob's question, while there is nothing in the process that is allowed for us, you know, to change this, it can be changed. There's all kinds of instances, I think, where the national office, you know, changes what has been done. We've been through, I feel like, 2 years of that very kind of thing happening, where if the process does not come to the right result, there has to be a mechanism for it to be corrected and changed. And I believe that's in there somewhere. I don't know that we'll be able to get to it. I don't know that we'll be able to get to it in time for this team and this season, but that's the kind of thing that we've got to address in this process.
Hey, Chad, Jenny Carlson with the Oklahoman. I know this is a lot of legal writing understanding, but it seems to me like you guys were asking the NCAA to look at the punishment. And what I read today from them sounded like they thought the process was correct. Did you feel like they looked at the right thing with you all?
Well, what I feel like, what I read in that, and I'm not an attorney either, but I feel like the infractions, the appeals committee had problems with what the infractions panel did. And instead of getting any kind of benefit of the doubt for what came out of the infractions panel for us, it's like all of the benefit of the doubt went to them. Well, that, like Coach Boynton says, is easy for them to sit in a room and do when they don't have to look at student athletes in the face. That is who this impacts and who this affects. Oklahoma State has been here for 130 years, and we've played basketball most of that time. We'll be here for beyond the next 130 years, and we'll be playing basketball for that time. These student athletes have 4 chances to do this, and they sat in that room and just took one of them away from them, and that is wrong.
I'm wondering from both of you, obviously this is still new news, but you guys have known a little longer than those of us in the public. I feel like outrage is a very common emotion right now. Is that still your feeling, or what have you done as the hours have ticked by and you've started to process this, and where are you on the emotional, I mean, obviously I know the sadness, I know the frustration, but where is that right now for both of you?
For me, it's focused on the guys and trying in a couple hours to have a good practice somehow with all the questions that are going through their heads that are being asked of them from other people. And so that's really where my focus is, and it'll probably be that way for quite a while. I won't really deal with any other emotion other than making sure that they're good and that, you know, they feel comfortable that we have their back.
You know, obviously went through all those emotions yesterday when we got the news, and then I think I wondered if I would wake up feeling any different this morning. Well, I think I felt worse. I was more upset, more, you know, confused, more, you know, just sad, all those emotions. It was just more because it, you know, I think for me, it's the inconsistencies of the process and the way that it is set up. You know, it's just very inconsistent, and when it results in something that impacts the student athletes like this has, that is a complete disconnect from what we're supposed to be here doing.
Mike, you mentioned the meeting last night, a practice today, a game Friday night. What is it that you do tell this group of players, this group of 18, 22-year-olds who have 30 games in front of them and know end game? And Chad, even for yourself as the leader the athletic department at this institution, what do you tell that group?
Well, for me, it's that they still have each other, right? There's some things that this team had talked about being able to achieve that realistically aren't possible at this point, right? Playing in the tournament, getting further than we did last year, possibly Final Four, national champ. Like, these guys have talked about those things. And so kind of got to reset a little bit that thought process, because there are other things that we still can accomplish. Isaac Likely can do some special things as a senior and leave here with a legacy of being a guy who helped re-energize the program during his time. And there are other guys who will have more chances coming back, but we'll see. Some of it's too far down the road to really consider. But right now, my focus is just trying to get them prepared to go out and have a good practice today.
Yeah, I think we, talked about just, there's a lot of things that happen, in the course of your life and the course of your career that are outside of your control. You can't control. You didn't have anything to do with it. So you've just got to stay focused on the things that you can control. Control how you respond to them. And I think that's exactly what Coach Boynton and the team will focus on doing.
Yeah, for Chad, the NCAA's release said, quote, including a history of major violations at the school that persons of authority condoned, participated, or negligently disregarded wrongful conduct. Did you get any further explanation on that and why that played a factor?
Well, they reference, that is all tied up, and Kevin Feit and our staff can probably give you a lot more detail about that, but in the mitigating and aggravating factors and how the process weighs out, and again, there's just inconsistencies in that. If you look at what some schools are awarded in mitigating factors versus aggravating factors and all that, there's no consistency in the way that is done. So, we all are aware of the history of this, but again, is that really, so we're going to use something that happened 25, 30 or more years ago here at OSU to punish this basketball team, these 17 student athletes? That is a very flawed process.
And for the NCAA tournament ban is going to be, a big talking point, but the scholarship reductions, that'll also be unique. How do you go about working with that, especially considering COVID gives everybody extra year of eligibility?
I really haven't thought that much about that part of it. Certainly, it's out there. But like I said, I'll deal with that as it comes. Obviously, recruiting is a big deal to us and what we do, but certainly something we'll have to consider as we move forward for the whatever years that'll have an effect on us.
Dean Rulo, College Sports. Chad, is there any regret having cooperated so fully with the NCAA now that the ruling is out?
I hope that we never have to go through anything like this again, obviously, but if we do, we will do things different.
Either of you can answer this, both of you, if you'd like. Chad, you referenced the time, just before Mike had ever coached a game and now going into season 5. This has obviously been something hanging over, this program since then. Did you, again, I know that there's so many other things going on here, but did you almost feel like there would come a point where the NCAA would say, you guys, almost like a time served, like you guys have been dealing with this for so long, just let's move forward? Did you think that might just happen?
Well, I was hopeful. I was optimistic that all of that would be taken into account. Of course, we were wondering why it was taking so long. You hoped that that was maybe a positive thing, that it was taking long, but we didn't know. But it appears to me no. I mean, that we've got no credit for any of that. We in a lot of ways have been punished this entire time, yet if you look at the ruling, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but it references that our probation period started yesterday. So by the time we get through this, we will have, in effect, been under some sort of punishment for almost 9 years.
And I'll add that I never expected to, the time served, in my mind, signifies you did something wrong and it's gone long enough. And in my mind, that's I don't think it was justified regardless of the ending. I thought the right thing to do was to look at the facts. Look at the facts of the case. Not what Stan Wilcox said 2 summers ago, which was, I would not want to be the first institution up sending a mandate, and we were the first institution up. And that there will be consequences while the investigation's happening. Because that signifies that in his minds, the end result was already kind of in the bag. With no thought of, like, let's go through the process and let the facts lead us to the decision. That clearly did not happen in this case.
Any other questions?
Coach, just kind of seeing all the other schools who are caught up in this probe, just like you guys, do you feel like you guys were treated fairly compared to what they've received so far?
Yeah, again, I'll be less than honest if I didn't admit I follow every single one of these deals. And, you know, I've read about the results in all of them. And there have been some results that have been very different from ours with very similar circumstances involved. And that makes it even more frustrating because consistency can be able to justify it, right? If there was some consistency, you can say, okay, these cases have very similar circumstances, and therefore the punishment you could justify being similar. But the cases have similar circumstances, and the consequences are drastically different, and that's utterly ridiculous.
Hey, Chad, as it relates to the system itself, I mean, it sounds like you guys, this is probably the end, at least for, you know, going through any sort of appeals or that sort of thing, but obviously you see that there are flaws. What's the next step in that regard? Do you feel like there is a way, a movement that you can either join or spur to maybe avoid something like this happening again?
Well, yeah, there has been a lot of discussion, as there's I mean, without going into all the details, there's a constitutional committee that's been formed to start the process. I mean, it's a huge undertaking, right? But to start the process of looking at what needs to change. And the infractions, enforcement, all of that is certainly one of them. You know, that we've all known that this has been a frustrating, inconsistent, flawed process for a long time. How we got there, you know, you can argue about or whatever, but I think there's a lot of agreement that it's broken and needs to be fixed. Now, what that looks like, how that happens, I don't know yet. I look forward to being part of that process to the degree that we can, and hope for serious reform because it's clear that it's needed. And I think the student athletes have to be the ones that are the center of the decisions that we make. And if we want to get serious about playing on a level playing field, then let's monitor and punish the ones that knowingly break the rules that we have in place, and not student athletes that were 7th graders when it happened.
Ben Hutchins, Ocali Sports, for both of you. Obviously, from your perspective, just about worst case scenario. But I'm wondering, is there any sort of sense of relief you get from having this thing finally over after 517 days?
But it's not over, right? The right decision could have brought some closure here. We're closer to the end. There's a probationary period out there still now, right? There's a scholarship reduction out there now still. So we're looking at 2-3 more years of dealing with the repercussions of this decision. So while one part of it, and that we don't have to worry about what the outcome is over, there's still some residual effect. I mean, there's a kid who's not going to get a scholarship to college because we can't offer one over the next whatever years it is with that scholarship reduction. That sounds like a really just way to punish somebody who did something wrong 5 years ago. So I don't think so.
Coach, I'm curious. You mentioned that this all happened so long ago. Some of your players might not even have a full picture of what exactly happened. How did, especially your seniors, react to the news? And do you expect maybe some residual effect of, playing a season where you can't achieve the, as you talked about, maybe true end goal of Final Four and national championship aspirations?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a great question. It's hard to see. I haven't, obviously, I was on the road yesterday, and I got an email as I landed in Dallas. It's been, somehow this stuff has always happened while I was flying to Dallas. So I immediately knew when I got back, I needed to get these kids informed, caught up to speed before today happened. The worst thing that could have happened is they read about this today. That would have made me just as bad as the people I named. And so I haven't seen them since then. I have reached out to several of them, but I'll see them in a couple of hours for practice, and we'll start to try to mend what's a hurt. We had some guys crying for sure. I mean, Isaac Likely, he was the first up in here, right? And this stuff happened long before he got here, right? Even long before Oklahoma State was involved in this. And so it just really is hard to make it make sense at all.
Are there any other questions?
I think this is for Chad. Bob Bowlesby just released a statement saying there's a conference rule that prohibits the basketball team from from playing in the Big 12 tournament. He said he anticipates a new policy review by the athletic directors to ensure that current stipulations remain appropriate. What can you tell us about that? And do you anticipate them being able to play in the Big 12 tournament this year?
Yeah, I talked to Bob yesterday, and we had that conversation, and I don't want to give any, false hope, because I don't know where that process is going to go. And the last thing we need is to have another hope and then disappointment. I appreciate the commissioner being willing to explore that, and we'll see where it goes. And I think there's some reconciliation that would need to happen with the NCAA over that. So this is, I think, new territory for Commissioner Bowlesby, just like it is for us. And so we'll certainly work with him through that process and see where that goes.